When is your design complete so that you're ready to go to manufacturing? So with the release to manufacturing, not the here's a few things and we still have a lot of details to work out, but it's been nailed down at all four corners. And for new product introduction, it's almost never all nailed down. There's always some stuff that's left over. So when you start the transition, you've got to be able to identify where we have confidence in this part of the project or these parts or this assembly, but we're still working on some other assembly because it's a process to get it transferred into manufacturing.
Yeah, it's a bit of an iterative loop too. You know, we just launched another product, a medical device actually, and you know, you have all your manufacturing documentation set up the way that you think, you know, the way that you think it works, and it defines the process. And then, you know, you have some quality documentation that goes behind that. But then, you know, we've talked about the pilot production run. The pilot production run tells you a lot to feed back into that documentation to really tighten it up and get it fully defined. And then you can go even deeper levels. You know, one of the parts of release to manufacturing has to do with training on the documentation. And one of the best ways to train on documentation is to show technicians the documentation. So there's a little bit of back and forth when it comes to RTM. Before you're fully released into ongoing manufacturing. So it's not like there's a definitive line.
And also but we have some standards for the documentation. Just to talk about the bill of materials, and the COTS components, we call them commercial off the shelf. This is stuff that you can call a supplier and they typically have it in stock. It might be a power supply that has certain characteristics. It could be a screw, but there's a catalog, there's a data sheet, there might even be a drawing behind it. But someone's offering it for sale and they stock them, and you can call any distributor, or the appropriate distributor anyway, and order them. So for those parts, we need to know who the manufacturer is so that we can get to the data sheet that describes exactly what it is, because you may be able to buy it from multiple sources. It's important that you know exactly what it is, because there are a lot of suppliers out there that will sell something described as a two-way valve, with a 24-volt DC coil. But they could be buying that from multiple manufacturers, and all of them are two-way valves with a 24-volt DC coil, but they have different characteristics and flow characteristics and sealing characteristics. But if you just need a valve and that's all you need, yeah, you would buy that. Like Amazon you can buy those valves all day and they're cheap, but you can't order them a month later and get the same one, because now Amazon is selling a different manufacturer's valve, or you can't look up the manufacturer, or it's hard to find it. You know, so it's important that you name the manufacturer so that we can get the data sheet and understand exactly how it mounts, exactly what the performance is. That way we have a specification for the part, and we can buy it from anybody, including directly from the manufacturer, typically, or a distributor. But a distributor's number doesn't really define the part, defines what they have to sell today. But a manufacturer's part number, that defines the part. And even though manufacturers reserve the right to change the design at any time, usually they don't do that. And if they do need to make a change, you're a big customer to them, they'll talk to you, they'll let you know that they're going to change. So So that's kind of a subtlety of on the bill of materials. In many cases, we'll get we need a certain part and buy it from Amazon, and they give a link, and that link works the day that you get it, and it might even work a month from now, but it probably won't work 2 years from now. So, that's why, and you never really know what's going to come in when you buy something from Amazon. Sometimes it's from manufacturer A, sometimes from manufacturer B. So,
Okay.
so on a bill of materials, you need to know the name of the manufacturer and you need to know the part number or whatever their designation is, so that you're ordering exactly the part that you want, and that's what you get shipped.
What John's alluding to is release to manufacturing. Kind of the first step there is buying the components. So the BOM has to be set up in such a way that allows purchasing and procurement to go out and across the supply chain and get the parts that were designed in, that were qualified in, that adhere to the regulatory report, all of that stuff. That BOM has to be pretty ironclad to make sure that the part that we specify is the one that we want, is the one that we need, and it comes in the same every time. So, release to manufacturing, in order to manufacture something, you got to get all the parts. So this is kind of the first step of it.
The risk is, of course, you're saying, okay, it's ready to go buy all the parts. And we do. If we end up with the wrong part because it's not been specified completely, meaning maybe the part number was partial and you left off an option that you happened to buy the last time and designed into your product, but you were not aware that that was an option, right? Like maybe they have a standard two-way valve and it's got a 120 volt coil on it, AC, but you wanted the 24 volt DC coil. But if you order the base part number, you get the AC version. So you give us the base part number. The last time they happened to supply you 24 volt coils, maybe because you were on the phone with them and they said, oh, would you like a 24 volt coil? And you said, oh yeah, that's great, thanks. And they send you what you asked for, but because the part number doesn't say, -24V or, some or an M in it, meaning the 24 volt coil, we get 200 of the wrong valves in, and that's a problem. And the specifying engineer is responsible for that. Design for manufacturing involves changing the design of the product or changing the process that the product is manufactured, which usually involves changing the design. So before you can really go out and build them in volume, all of that DFM work must be done and approved. That DFM work happens usually, you have a beta prototype, someone starts doing some DFM work and then builds pilot units to make sure that the DFM work was done correctly. The pilot units would be the ones that would be sent for regulatory approval, because that's what you intend to build in manufacturing. If you send a beta prototype out, you kind of run the risk of having a beta prototype approved, but that's not what you're actually going to sell.
Yeah.
So you really kind of want to hold off and do the pilot production and use those for regulatory approval. So the DFM work needs to be done before RTM. RTM is after all the design work's done, the beta prototypes, everyone's happy with them, the DFM work has been completed, and frankly, the regulatory agencies have weighed in because they might have some late-breaking design changes for you. And then the design's locked down. Now you can release to manufacturing. If you jump the gun, and maybe people do, they think, it's probably going to pass. And they're right, it's probably going to pass. Or maybe the changes will be minor. But let's say that we're building 100 of them. If something does have to change, something as simple as you need to add a bail to the power line because you need to suppress some noise, or, oh, you have the wrong power entry module you need to change it to one that's certified, your problem got multiplied by 100 because maybe it's just a matter of changing a part number or adding a component that has a place to fit in the design. But maybe you've got to change the enclosure because now the cutout is wrong.
Mhm.
The power entry module that was forced to change, oh, it needs a new enclosure. Well, now maybe you've got to scrap the enclosures that you bought. And there's 100 of them, not one. Right? So release to manufacturing, the reason that we make a big deal out of it is because the risk is high if the documentation isn't correct or you haven't completed all those tasks. The more tasks you complete, the tighter the documentation, the lower the risk when you go into manufacturing. As well as the document review checklists, right? It's kind of important that when you're about to release your design to manufacturing, it's no longer, just a 3D model and you send a step file off to some guy and he 3D prints it for you. Now there's fit and finish and tolerances and all of that's going to be detailed on a drawing. And that can come up to bite you too. If you've got the wrong tolerances, all of a sudden the parts aren't going to fit together, even though they fit fine in the computer. And now there's a little bit of an interference. You need a process to nail all that down.